Recorded Books and One Click Digital present Last to Die, A Defeated Empire, A Forgotten Mission, and the Last American Killed in World War II, by Stephen Harding, narrated by Jack Garrett. But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not faint. Isaiah chapter 40, verse 31. Once you have tasted flight, you will forever walk the earth with your eyes turned skyward, for there you have been, and there you will always long to return. Leonardo da Vinci. Prologue. Just before 7 o'clock, on the morning of August 18, 1945, a huge four-engined aircraft moved slowly onto the end of a 7,000-foot-long runway at Yontan Airfield on the southwestern coast of the island of Okinawa. Though the machine's long cylindrical fuselage, tall tail, and high, narrow wings gave her a certain elegance of line, on the ground she was ponderous. Loaded with fuel and men, she rocked heavily on squat tricycle landing gear as she turned her nose into the wind, then shuddered to a halt as her crew made the last preparations for takeoff. The aircraft, a B-32 Dominator heavy bomber of the U.S. Army Air Force's 386th Bombardment Squadron, was one of four scheduled to depart that morning on what everyone in the unit hoped would be a routine photo reconnaissance mission over Tokyo. At that point in World War II, routine should have been a given. Japan had accepted the Allies' terms for unconditional surrender 4 days earlier, and President Harry S. Truman had ordered the suspension of all offensive operations against Japan on August 15. Yet 4 B-32s, flying a photo recon mission over Tokyo 2 days later, had been attacked and damaged by Japanese fighters, whose pilots had apparently not heard of the ceasefire ordered by Japan's Emperor Hirohito, or, more ominously, had chosen to ignore it. At the early morning briefing for the August 18 mission, the Dominator crewmen had been told to assume they'd be flying into what might still be very hostile territory. With final checks completed, the pilot of the lead B-32, 24-year-old First Lieutenant James L. Klein, released the aircraft's brakes and smoothly advanced the throttles. The low growl of 4 idling Wright R-3350 radial engines quickly swelled to a gut-rumbling howl, and the Dominator, the racy nose art painted on the sides of her forward fuselage identified her as Hobo Queen 2, rapidly picked up speed as she surged down the runway. When the bomber hit 130 miles per hour abreast of the 4,500-foot marker, Klein gently lifted the nose. The aircraft was instantly transformed from a lumbering, earthbound behemoth into something far more graceful. Her gear coming up and flaps retracting, Hobo Queen 2 roared over the coral pit at the end of the airstrip and began a climbing 180-degree turn. With the runway clear, the pilot of the second Dominator, 27-year-old First Lieutenant John R. Anderson, moved his bomber from the taxiway into takeoff position. The aircraft shook as Anderson did a last engine run-up, and the acrid smell of burning high-octane aviation gasoline wafted through the fuselage. Seconds later, her huge, paddle-bladed propellers clawing the already humid air, the B-32 began the sprint down Yontan's runway. As Anderson's Dominator picked up speed, 4 young men sat huddled on a low, cot-like settee fixed to the port side of the fuselage in the bomber's rear cabin. 2 of the men were gunners. Once the Dominator was airborne, they'd take their places, one in the tail turret and the other in the rearmost of the B-32's 2 top turrets. The other 2 men, 29-year-old Staff Sergeant Joseph Lacharite and 20-year-old Sergeant Anthony Marchione, were not members of the bomber's crew. They were assigned to the Yontan-based 20th Reconnaissance Squadron, Lacharite as an aerial photographer, and Marchione as a gunner photographer's assistant. At their feet rested a heavy canvas bag.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?